Welcome back. It's a big morning for former Republican members of Congress. With us, David Dreier, who is a former chair of the House Rules Committee and now the chairman of the board for the Tribune Company. Listen, lots to talk to you about, but we had your former colleague, Jim Rogan, former manager in the impeachment of Bill Clinton. You voted for that impeachment. Was that a mistake?
No, I mean, I'm happy that I did that. And one of the things that I said at the time was voting in favor of impeachment in the House of Representatives did not necessarily mean removal from office. And there were more than a few of my colleagues who shed a tear when, at the end of the day, the United States Senate chose not to remove Bill Clinton from office. And I thought, aha, James Madison's vision is working exactly as planned. The process of impeachment is obviously one that is political, even though many people say that politics have to be taken out. It is diminished, but remember, in 1868, Andrew Johnson's son-in-law was a United States senator, and he was one of the judges in that impeachment trial. So the idea that there is no politics involved is absolutely preposterous.
Before we get into your stewardship of the Tribune Publishing Company, Chicago Tribune, Baltimore Sun, New York Daily News, you were also a producer of something called Better Angels, a documentary which promoted U.S.-China relations. What do you say about what the president did this week in signing a new trade deal?
Listen, I think it's positive. I mean, as you mentioned the issue of trade, I will tell you what this really comes down to is one word, and that is technology. I mean, as you know, in 1987, I introduced the first legislation calling for the elimination of tariff barriers among Canada, the United States, and Mexico. It became the North American Free Trade Agreement. The president has just put into place this new NAFTA. It's preposterous to say that it's throwing NAFTA or tearing it up. It's not doing that. It is simply recognizing that an internet didn't exist in 1993 when it happened. When it comes to China, I will say that the notion of tackling the issues like corporate espionage, intellectual property theft, those are things that need to be done. And continuing to engage is something that we point out in our movie Better Angels, and I think it's something that needs to be promoted as much as possible.
How do you square that with the fact that you were chairman of the Tribune Publishing Company, you're standard bearer for free press with your company, and this is a country that has done everything in its power to restrict any segment, any sort of free press.
Conan, trade promotes private enterprise, which creates wealth, which improves living standards, which undermines political repression.
But we've seen standards improve over the past several decades in China, but politically...
Well, look what's going on in Hong Kong right now. Obviously, the Chinese government is dealing with a great deal of uncertainty. We need to continue to create that kind of exposure, getting Western values as well as possible in there. The notion that we overnight can all of a sudden create a free press in a country with 1.5 billion people it's a long slog. And I think that this agreement, working to eliminate barriers, is important. The key that we have as a challenge there is the issue of technology also, as I mentioned on the North American Free Trade Agreement. And that is, we have lots of challenges on artificial intelligence security. We have issues like 5G network. Those are questions that are going to be on the horizon as we proceed with this relationship.
But when you have the Secretary of State going to private enterprise, going to Stanford this past week and going to tech companies and saying, listen, we can't stop you from working with the Chinese, but just remember, anything you do with them, they require you to share your intellectual property, your secrets with the Chinese military.
Right. And so the fact is we need to have a focus on that kind of security. As I mentioned, artificial intelligence security is going to be a big challenge as we proceed.
You're not bothered by the stories of the security cameras?
Of course I'm bothered by it. Of course I'm bothered by it.
Surveillance on the population?
Of course I'm bothered by it. But I mean, the question is how do we do it? I mean, many people have said that when the Soviet Union crumbled, we should turn China into another Soviet Union. Well, the fact of the matter is that China is not the Soviet Union. Bad actors, lots of serious problems, but I believe in more rather than less engagement. Expanding our Western values there, I believe, will ultimately bring about the things that I feel passionately about, and that is developing free expression.
What's the state of journalism in America today?
Well, it's obviously tough. I mean, you and I have talked about the fact that while there is a huge hunger for content, the way people get it is difficult. The wave of the future is not holding up and reading newspapers. I believe...
You can't monetize print media anymore?
Well, one of the problems that we have is that Google and Facebook are able to monetize the intellectual property that we create. They'll take a political cartoon, they'll take an article, and they have their advertising on it. I believe that we actually should do everything that we can to come together. There's legislation pending to allow for negotiations so that we can work to ensure that they don't get all of the financial benefits from the intellectual property that we're creating. I think we need to recognize how important journalists are. I actually think that conservatives should be promoters of journalists. Why? Because journalists challenge authority, and as a conservative, the greatest authority you're challenging is big government, that behemoth. Local investigative journalism is so critically important, Conan. You know that very well. You do it brilliantly here at NBC. No, you do. I mean, and you over 3 decades, 33 years here at NBC, you do a phenomenal job.
34, but thank you.
34. But the fact of the matter is, you do know that you cannot do the kind of detailed reporting that print journalists do. You cannot get into that kind of stuff. We need to promote that. And that's why one of the issues that we've dealt with is, very sadly, the fact that in our newsroom of one of our newspapers, the Capital Gazette, the oldest newspaper in the United States, first printed in 1727, we had 5 of our colleagues gunned down, and that's why we're creating this fallen journalist memorial.
I wanted to get into that. This is a memorial that you're targeting for the Capitol Mall in Washington, D.C. That
it'll be near the mall. But,
near the mall.
Your brilliant idea, by the way, having it as close to the archives as possible, next to the First Amendment, is, I think, a good idea.
What's the point of this memorial?
To try and build a memorial on the mall, recognizing, Conan, that we have not been able to. We've not been able to have the kind of appreciation that James Madison had for it. And by the way, we're working on this at the Dreier Roundtable at Claremont McKenna College, too, and I'm very, very pleased with a number of the initiatives we have there. We're doing an op-ed writing contest with students that are going. Because of the challenges on campuses, we're working on putting together actually structured Oxford-style debates, because these attacks take place on the campus, people being blocked from speaking. We want both sides represented very well. And I'm also working to give out a civility award for people in public service who actually engage in civil discourse. And it's sad that we have to do that, but we've got great professors there. Jack Pitney, who you know, Terrell Jones, are doing a phenomenal job of moving these new and innovative programs that we've got going at the Roundtable.
An award for civility in politics. That is said commentary.
Well, we're hoping to make it happen.
David Dreier, former member of Congress, former chair of the House Rules Committee, chairman of the board, Tribune Publishing.
And go